more updated results from when we last presented, or when Xiaoying and I presented to the city for the Healthy Homes program. And I have some ideas of what would be worth bringing forward, especially since we're recording. Maybe it can be of use to others asynchronously on the team. Um, I will. Would you mind if I keep it in this mode, as I don't intend to go slide by slide? Is it big enough to see? Okay. And I
My
think,
eyes are really, really close.
oh, oh no.
It's okay, I can do it.
Okay. I really just need the tiles. I know what's on them. Um, so different um, individuals among this group have maybe intersected on this project. I know Christian's very familiar with our data collection and analysis, as he's was a big part of the actual processing of filters, and Marilee has been involved since phase one, before this was even deployed at the scale that we did for this study. I think, Erica, you might have the least exposure to it, though we might have talked a little bit about the home health report in the context of preparing communication or sharing materials with Tammy and others for communication for the Sapphires project. Um, but I do think in terms of themes that we have been interested in on this project, it's not a bad one to give an overview of. So this was the title we used for the Healthy Homes program gathering, empowering residents through personalized report back on indoor air quality, impacts on home air and user experience. So our goals were two-pronged. One, to understand how indoor air quality changes when we give personalized information to people, and the other is to understand what that experience is like for them apart from whether their indoor air quality improves. So as I say it out loud, I think of many of the things you've shared, Erica. Be interesting to hear your take. I do think it is worth starting with this sort of level setting. Traditional air monitoring has typically been pretty expensive and complex and hard to scale, um, which has been an underlying premise for much of the mechanical engineering work that Christian and John Volkins have worked on. And I've been a partner in that, but more on the study deployment. So stationary monitoring is very large. This is like, something I wish I had a human on there for scale, but you can see there are stairs. So this is a large footprint for really high quality, high accuracy, high precision, but very expensive measurements that would never fit in a home and we wouldn't be trying to necessarily. And then in the middle are the portable monitors that largely grew out of an industrial hygiene tradition. They're smaller, they're able to be worn, but they're still kind of a pain. Um, and a lot of them did individual things historically. So like with the personal monitoring, where we have taken what's in the middle there and tried to shrink it onto a single platform, like the AirPen that you may have heard Christian talk about or others talk about. The home health box has the same sort of underlying motivation, which is to take a lot of different uh, ways of measuring air pollution, capturing samples, measuring it in real time, and put it on a single platform that's compact and relatively easy to send to someone, ideally by mail, so we no longer have to go to their home. So a big feature of this study was that any household that received the home health box, they received it by it being shipped to their home and them shipping it back to us with prepaid shipping managed by Access Sensor Technologies, who's the developer of this home health box. Um, at the same time, over the span of when we wrote the first proposal, second proposal, third third iteration, um, the dates on a lot of these papers span like 2019 to 2024, roughly. I would say, in the indoor air quality realm, an increasing emphasis on personalized, cost-conscious reporting back. We did a selective literature review of about 25 to 30 papers that were very focused on the report back piece, and we constrained our search to household level environmental reporting. So some of the um, studies that we looked at didn't deal with air quality, but they did deal with things that were at the home that would be personal to that household. And so that literature review really did help inform how we would construct the report, and I'll come to that in just a minute. I do think it's also useful to have in mind what the study design is. So the purple band is our intervention group, and the tan taupe band is the control group, 50 households in each group. The major difference, so both groups get 3 home health boxes spaced out about 1 to 2 months. Sometimes there's a long tail on that in the study sample, but for the most part, it's maybe 4 to 6 months to participate overall. So over the span of 4 to 6, maybe 8 months, a home would get a baseline measurement with a home health box deployed for a week, shipped back to us. We did the analysis. And then if they were in the intervention group, the intervention was the report itself. So they would get the report and then they get another box for another week of measurement. They'd get another report. They'd get the third box and then they get a final summary. And then our control group, same process, only they didn't get any of their data until the very end. So this randomized control trial was designed so that we could test the impact of the intervention being the what we called the home health report. Any questions on that design? It's fairly straightforward. Um, the
So
home
you're
health,
you're really
oh yeah,
testing just getting the people getting the information because everything else is the same.
yes, everything else is the same. So I would say the way this was designed, we're not testing the impact of getting measurements. It's the way they get the measurements is all the same. But we are testing what the impact of the information that they receive is on two things, which is one was indoor air quality, what we're measuring with the home health
Mhm.
box, and the other was um, what their impressions were. And I'll come to the questions we use for impressions. On the indoor
Cool.
air quality side, we measure things with filters. The two eyes of this robot collect PM 2.5 and PM 10 sample. Um, that comes back to the lab when they ship it back, and Christian facilitated getting those measured for their mass so we could report PM 2.5 concentrations. In a subset of homes that were interested in PM 10, we reported those as well. And then we had well, the box has a series of time resolved pollutant concentrations that include things like carbon dioxide, nitrogen dioxide. We did not actually have CO. I should take that off. Sorry. You could also add ozone, but we did not. So that's sort of what it's capable of. Um, So I want to show the report because this has been what I don't think circulated with the whole team and maybe just for the documentation for the team. I like the way Shaggy and I structured this to kind of walk you through the architecture of it. It has 4 pages, every report. We initially thought that we would be printing them because the community partners we partnered with when we wrote the proposal thought that everybody would want a hard copy. In reality, I don't think we ever printed a home health report. They all went digitally by email. Um, as a PDF. So it was a 4 page PDF. The first 2 pages on the left never changed, other than to say first report, second report, third report, and the dates for the measurements. But that first page is meant to remind them, like, this is your home health report for this study that you've agreed to be in. Then the second page was how to read my report, and this always stayed the same. The bar in the middle was our color coding of green, yellow, and red for low, medium, and high concern, where low meant pollutant levels are within guideline levels, no reason to make a change. Medium concern meant that the levels were elevated relative to guideline values, but not extreme because for most of, I shouldn't say extreme, they weren't necessarily hitting our best available threshold for guidance on health, but they were above maybe what the low end of guidelines might recommend. And then high concern was concentrations that are above the most well-documented guideline levels for or standards for the pollutant. So I think this is where a lot of thought went into what we did. Not like we're special. It's just that indoor pollutant interpretation is not as straightforward as outdoor pollutant constant like interpretation. So fine PM 2.5, we rely on National Ambient Air Quality Standards for outdoor air. We just import those indoors and use that to decide our green, yellow, red. Nitrogen dioxide is somewhat the same as their ambient air quality standards, but then carbon dioxide is not itself necessarily a pollutant to impacting your health, but more an indicator of potentially of airflow and ventilation. So we used ASHRAE guidelines. I think Tammy, you and I talked a bit about this. I think we were building this at the time when I think ASHRAE was its most conservative, and it was just a year or two after COVID. So we, I would say, interpreted available information in probably in the upper 95th percentile of conservatism. I think going back, I'd probably say the green to yellow transition is the most conservative it could be. And you might make an argument for like changing those dial plots.
Yeah,
So
I think we're using something different
yeah.
because that conservatism does still exist, but
Hmm.
it's also close to unachievable in my understanding.
Yes. Hmm.
And I don't think we want that people to have that level of concern for that
Right.
point.
Right. Um, yeah. And I would be fully supportive of, or I am fully supportive of that. So, um, we took those divisions and then we translated them into these three dial plots, or four if we included a fourth pollutant, where each report has just like on an odometer where you would fall on the dial given the concentration that was measured over the whole period, so a time averaged measure. And then on the right-hand side, what you see is quite small, was the time series, for which we had time series data for the three major pollutants that we were measuring, PM 2.5, nitrogen dioxide, and carbon dioxide. The shading that you might see, see if I can zoom in, is day night. We had a little sun, moon, sun, moon. So people could see from start to finish for their measurement, day to night time. Um, Anecdotally, we found people liked this because they could be like, oh, I was not home that day, or oh yeah, that's when I had people over, or yeah, I cooked every time at every evening for the during the week or something like that. So there was a little bit of we never got anybody that came back and said something like your data have to be wrong because they don't reflect activities that we did. I don't know that we would have. We did get complaints, so it's not that we didn't ever get negative feedback. Um, I feel like people felt comfortable reaching out to us if they were overly concerned or if they were like having difficulty interpreting things. But we got very little of that. I'd say out of 100, maybe 4%. Um, And then this last one, this mitigation strategies, is where I just see the greatest potential to do more, but we did the best we could. Because it's a treatment, we had to keep it, at least during going through the IRB, we had to keep it standardized in a way that it wasn't changing too much. So we decided the bottom would be these principles to improve indoor air quality, the Keep It principles from National Center for Healthy Housing. Those were always the same. And then the top came from a database we created of about 50 unique recommendations, but not, you know, not snowflake level unique, like snow versus rain, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if my weather analogy holds up, but um, we did always, if their air quality was good for certain things, like in this example, it's green for all of them. So we included things like overall the indoor air quality is good. Keep up the habits for healthy indoor air. We added that because we feel like there's a negative bias in our reporting, and a lot in a decent fraction of homes, they um, had good air quality. So we thought we would say that. Then we would include other recommendations that are we felt were like good reminders, even if we didn't see indication of a problem, but that matched what they told us in a survey that we gave them at the beginning. So we know if they said they use candles, and they said how frequently, we would provide some like, limit use of candles or incense indoors um, to the degree possible. So um, I don't know. I feel like I could just stay on this slide for the rest of the day. I find it very difficult to bridge this gap between, and Tammy, you presented this way back when you were, I think, applying for your job here, like archetypes or like this like middle ground between too overgeneralized, but versus not too personalized, so personalized that it's unachievable to have the level
Yeah,
of personalization that would make this report truly personalized. I think we struck a middle ground that was very pragmatic and defensible, but still feels even now like very underwhelming.
I
Um,
think this is very tense um for me, and I we could talk about that more. I don't want to derail your presentation, but I feel like uh when you get to actually what to do about it,
mhm,
there's a couple of recommendations. Don't have so many sources in your house.
mhm,
Increase your ventilation, but most people don't have very much control over it.
right.
Or sorry, you can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a mismatch somehow between the importance that we're stating for indoor air quality and then our tools to actually address that in a meaningful fashion. And this gets a little bit also to something Christian raised a couple of meetings ago, which is that the ventilation itself and the intervention itself is, it's just kind of crude. It's like whacking things. It's like whacking ants with a big hammer.
Yeah.
Or he didn't say that, but that is how I've been feeling about it. So,
Mhm.
um, so I think there's a lot of mismatch in this space, and that makes me feel it gives me some amount of anxiety in that there hasn't been a resolution. So I don't know if that is a deterrent or similar to what you're saying, but that's my own thought.
Now,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
can I ask a question? When you guys are talking about the mismatch and the and how you're feeling, is it that you're I don't I'm trying to think how to ask this that makes sense when it does in my head, sort of, but not really. Is the that you feel like you're able to tell them stuff, but there's really not a well, it sounds like you're able to tell them stuff, but you don't feel like there's a lot they can do about it. So you're providing them with information and saying, here, have this, and then tough beans, you know this now, you can't do much. Or is it that um, the well, yeah, I mean, I'm a little confused about when you say what you're saying. That is really crappy what I just said, but I'm trying to think about it from the side of the risk, how people are perceiving the risk and how they, that kind of stuff and how they're processing it. And is it that you feel bad because you can't help them more, or that they, in general, it sounds like they're doing okay, and them knowing they're doing okay can also be a good thing for them to know. And I may be just completely missing what the tension is that you guys are feeling.
I think my intention might be different from Ellison's, and I just injected it into the wrong place. So you don't have to solve my problem, solve Ellison's problem.
No, I don't know if they're the exact same. I guess in the spirit of like I value the candor of this group. I feel like a finding, I've talked before about this idea of negative space findings. Like a finding I'm not going to be reporting in a home health box paper is I think we've overblown society's attention on air pollution risk because it's so quantifiable and it's so we can so fluently present it. Like to me, whether you like our design or not, pages 1, 2, and 3, I think are awesome. Like relative to what I've seen in I know maybe I sound a little bit excessive there, but like we can really fluently present what we've measured in the context of these guidelines and standards, and we can make it look very like you can digest the information very well. But it's in this vacuum of nothing else about the rest of their life. And I think my
Mm.
discomfort has become because that's what I can get funded on, because I did my PhD in measuring air pollution, and because I came to CSU and partner with health people and people that build technology, and because I can get NIH to fund this kind of study, you bring your attention to the thing I can talk to you about. And even I can show you, like, they're generally happy. Like, what this plot is showing, like, the more green you see, the more positive. The more blue you see, the lower, sorry, not more positive, the higher valence or the higher intensity. So their curiosity is strong, their interest is strong, they feel informed, they felt respected. Very few of them report a high intensity of helplessness or worry. Like, and the air pollution didn't actually get that much better. Statistic on the for using a difference in difference method, basically we can barely perceive a difference in CO2. And I think it's largely because CO2 is so influenceable. Like we can tell them, oh, your CO2 is a little high because it was over 800, which anybody's home will be over 800 if you have more than 2 people in it. And they introduce a little bit more of opening their windows, and so it goes down. So we can barely perceive that a little bit. So, like, is their experience generally positive? It was, but I feel like I don't want to keep studying air quality because I don't want to keep bringing people's attention to it. And I know that's bad, like, or I don't know that's bad. I feel ashamed to say it, and I feel uncomfortable saying it in larger circles than this.
I don't think it's bad.
But
Um,
that's what I'm
yeah,
saying to you, Marilee, is like
yeah, right.
my negative space finding is I've given outsized attention in someone else's brain to something that I think probably doesn't need that much space. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So, so I want to, is it okay if I address, I'm sorry, Marilee, it seemed like you might be about to talk. I have
go
immediate
ahead and then
reactions.
you go ahead, Tammy, and then I've got something to say, but please go ahead.
Okay, so I'll try to make this short because it's the kind of thing that could ramble everywhere. One, I think I've come to believe that the attention question is so important that it's what I want to do in the second half of my sabbatical is just look at literature on attention and how
Mhm.
much you have and how it's directed. And this is an outgrowth of the work we were attempting to do on well-being, Ellison. So we were looking at multifaceted well-being and it somehow never got traction. And I think it's because it needs this sort of bandwidth approach overlaid on it. So that's a thing I'm thinking about. And then the second thing I wanted to say is that I do believe what you're saying that air quality doesn't deserve that much attention in many cases. I am now more interested in saying, it is a problem. We do see that it contributes to a high burden of mortality and morbidity in some cases. I would rather go work on those where it does deserve attention instead of randomly saying like everybody should think about air quality. Find where it deserves the attention.
Hmm.
And and I would say a couple of things. One is that the work that you do where you're honing the way to do it and you know and how to communicate about it, how to measure it, and then you're able to identify places where this will really make a difference here, that it is something in the scheme of their health hazards that you are, an improvement in their home environment would make a difference, then I mean, I connote it to like if you found out, oh, you've got some people that are smoking indoors and you're showing X and Y to them, and then you're connecting that to here's this data on, this is really not great. This is a bad one. That the fact that you might have 20 that are like, hey, you're doing fine, versus the one where you got them, both people will be happy. You can, in part, you could think about it that, or I do, is that we hear more and more about, people are spending more time in their homes, and is the home a safe place from a health standpoint beyond, yes, it protects you from lightning and evil people coming in, usually things like that. But when it comes to, are you exposing yourself to something you shouldn't? Like if this was a high radon home, that letting people, reassuring people that, hey, that's not something to worry about. That also is a nice thing for them to know, and it enforces within them, all right, we're doing the right things in our home, and our home is a safe place. And when they are making these small adjustments, like you were saying, like opening their windows and things like that, I would argue that a little bit higher level of awareness overall about air and the importance of good air will carry, I'm figuring out like how do you measure that this is an effect, but would carry across multiple places where they might be exposed to bad air. I mean, they might think about it more. And so you're building for want of a better word, like a schema for them about, hey, air quality is something you really need to think about. I don't have to think about it all the time, but I'm learning something that I hadn't, and when I need to pay attention to it, I will. And so I think that there is this um, lessening of overall concerns that can be very helpful to a person, so that there's value. Though I do completely understand and agree when it comes to, is this the biggest problem that we can tackle? No, probably not. Um, but in those places where it is where it's really bad, yes, it is a key one. And in those places where it's not, um, you can, afford some level of, hey, here's something, not to be worried about. And um, the other thing I would say is that, cripes, I had it, sorry. The fact that we do tend to focus on those things which we can measure
Mm-hmm.
and measure with confidence. But I think there can be efforts pushed toward like figuring out the constellation of things that a person is dealing with. And I think it's that, and that's part of that idea of having them weigh and the trade-offs on multi-risk situations.
Mm-hmm.
And I know like at one point, Ellison, I think, and maybe this was like, wasn't there at one point like their water got tested, or there was and I may be making that part up.
On
Um,
none of this, the Access Sensor Technologies has done some stuff with water testing. Maybe Christian even knows more. In this particular study, there was never any
for water.
water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm wondering about, I mean, what I like about this, and I think is, and one of the many things I like about this project is it's a great test of a process and of a way to communicate and of a way to measure and of a way to get things into people's hands and back that can be replicated and really serve as a model for how this could be done. And we need more of those, quite honestly, regardless of, like what it is. And this way you're doing it, the way you're thinking about people as part of the process and everything, that's huge in my view.
Yeah. Thanks, Barely.
I have a question on this just to make sure I'm reading these plots right. So it's at the end of week 1 for the treatment, end of week 2, end of week 3, and then the control at the end of reading their pamphlet.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Sorry.
okay, so then let's just look at one. I don't know, maybe curious, just since it's the top one. So you would expect, if your hypothesis was true, that your, little booklet was making an impact, which I think it is. I'm not questioning that. I'm just trying to understand the plot. So
Yeah.
if the booklet is making an impact, the amount of green in curious should increase from 1 to 2 and 3 and get bigger. And then, but shouldn't the control match week 1 essentially? Because that's the first time they've ever seen this information.
Um, So, yeah, I'm actually glad you brought this up because I didn't really specify what I was saying. I feel, yes, that would be our hypothesis, is that the control group would more match week 1. To
Okay.
me, what these data say and what we're sort of hashing out in the final stages of writing a paper is I think them enrolling in the study in the first place is it. That's the effect.
Mm,
I shouldn't have said, in fact, I think our DID analysis of this there's no effect to being treated, but our overall impression is that people in the study, rated curiosity high, interest high, informed high, and weren't didn't feel helpless, worried. I shouldn't have framed it as more or less actually by treatment, because to me these data say like the fact that you came into the study and learned about air quality at all, like the people in the control group, the thing we can't control for is they're in the study for the
mhm,
same length of time. They're sort of generally exposed to the home health box coming to their home. And the other piece that is not captured in our data, but people would write us while they were in the control group, and we had to sort of say, we can tell you your results. But I know they were going online, like they would ask questions. They're like, well, I read this. And so I think the very act of being in the study is what made them more aware, more interest, or not more. There's no more here because there's no timepiece. Sorry, I should stop saying that. And that actually is a result that holds up with another housing intervention study in public housing, where there was like a control and a treated group of people in public housing who got new housing and people that were in public housing but didn't get new housing yet. Everybody got better because people were invested in improving their housing. Like I learned about this during my JPB fellowship, and I'm like, that's the same thing that we're finding. So maybe to Marilee's point, like if we read these results in a positive frame, I think one of the outcomes is that people do feel informed, or we what we measure suggests they feel informed. And we didn't test this, but maybe what they're something they're informed on is that timing of I don't need to be globally anxious and worried about my air quality, but the recommendations I got are like when I have guests at home, I'll think about it a little bit more, or when I'm cooking, I'll turn on that hood, or you know what, I don't know. That's the part we don't really know. Well, we have a little bit of, let me see if I can, uh, it may not be in these. Sorry, but I click around.
Oh,
I'm not sure I have it here, what people said they would do. So yeah, sorry. I don't think I have it here. We have what people said they would do. Um, and here it is. This is it. Yeah. Um, we asked them about on the left-hand side are all of the things we ask them about. Um, overall, we asked them overall, have you taken or will you take actions to improve IAQ? And we did have taken and will take separately. They weren't grouped. And then we had specific things, minimize the use of products, that's your source thing, Tammy. Minimize use of appliances, increase window opening, etc. And these are ordered in terms of what we consider to be no cost, if the dollar sign's X'd out, to like increasing costs down at the bottom, consult with an HVAC inspector. That's three. These are all qualitative in terms of cost. And then the color coding is purple is treated. So they have three, they're asked this question 3 times, and then control is only asked this question at the end. Um, I guess the reason I bring this up is to say, I think there's some evidence to what you were saying, Marilee, that maybe what they learned allows it to be less of my air is bad and I don't know where it's bad or when it's bad and I have nothing to do to like I can constrain that concern or that attention packet on to some set of conditions. We didn't really test that, but that's like how I might. Uh,
yeah. I mean, I think that too, the group you need the next time as another comparison group is the group that um, really just gets nothing but like they're, and actually maybe you can, yeah, I'd probably measure them at both ends, but it's a group that is not enrolled in the same way, or it's a group where you are, because we'll do this sometimes in a study where we don't want to signal that we're really interested maybe in how much they brush their teeth. So we'll ask them
Uh-huh.
5 billion questions about a whole lot of stuff and kind of try and, um, and and that's it. We don't do anything else with them so that they don't get anything beyond that. Because I think that you're right that the box itself is a cue that,
Hmm.
and then that cue, and it's queued up because it's coming and going. You know,
Yeah.
you could do the next time maybe is even because I'm wondering the extent to which novelty is going on every time it
Hmm.
comes again,
Yeah.
every time that the one group gets the report. Is the box typically out where they can see it? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. It's in
okay,
a common area. It couldn't be in we asked it to not be in the kitchen. We asked them to take a picture of where they put it, and it's generally in like a very visible place.
okay, because I think that's part of what's going on. I would argue, and not to rain on your design because there's a lot of really good stuff in your design, but um, that cue is out there reminding them of things. And actually, and the idea of the cue, I mean, what I'm trying to say is that I wonder the extent if you did this over a longer period, usually the cue will um, start to fall back and it won't be as interesting and won't notice it as much and things like that. And then we're really, interested about, well, with the cue not being so obvious, are you still doing X and Y?
Hmm.
And things and those and I think that study could, that could be another condition that can be
Hmm.
put in um, because you've got it. The good thing is they're both getting cued. I'd really be and if there was anything out there, a study that talked about measures of people's concerns about air quality in general or their confidence about like is it good or bad compared to your people. Did your people get their, like your baseline stuff? Was that before they learned? Well, they would have had to have, of course, the consent form, but was that the only thing they had at that point?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, okay. The other cool thing is, Ellison, the work that you are doing raises some really interesting questions about human, behavior and human processing of information and all of that stuff. That is stuff that we have a hard time getting.
Hmm.
So, from that standpoint, these studies are really novel and helpful to our end of things. And by our, I don't mean you're not in that hour. I just
No,
mean
I know.
that.
I don't mean. I mean, I think the headliner for me is Maya Angelou's quote. People don't remember what you say; they remember how you made them feel. I'm like, that's what this study says to me. I mean, I think we were like Xiao Ying and Olivia, especially, and just uh, trying to interact with people, and then our partners in Las Cruces. Like everybody was so good in the interactions with people that I would have a hard time not thinking that that's part of the reason it went well.
Yeah. Well, they did have a good experience and the boxes worked and they believed in them. Because
Yeah,
that's the other thing that you've got here is that they believe that technology is working and measuring and the data are in line with what they would kind of expect. Because when
right.
the expectation is different than, what their perceived reality is, then that also is a problem if you then are saying, oh, you have a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
Um,
cool.
I know we're getting close to time, but I wanted to come back around to a point that you made earlier, Tammy, and maybe it's something Christian or Erica, you've like encountered this in other places. I I think this is like the lead service line issue in the United States, where we have 100 million households. We have 9 million service lines from utility to home that are lead. And we don't have the money to go dig up everybody's front yard and figure out is it lead or not. No homeowner is going to let us do that. And it also costs like a couple $1,000s per dig. But we want to find the lead pipes. And I think that's the same thing in my mind when I think about indoor air quality now, because what this analysis on the left-hand side is showing you is that the reductions that we observed were statistically significant when we broke things down by baseline pollutants. So if you already had high pollution, N not super surprising, like your potential, your margin for improvement was more, and we saw significant impacts. If you had natural gas, which is the single source of NO2 basically in a home, and we could tell you that you did, and we could tell you something you could do, like run the vent, nobody replaced the stove. We saw decreases in nitrogen dioxide and other pollutants that are associated with it. So across this row, the pollution levels dropped. If you didn't have a vent hood, and you did something to do some sort of ventilation. So like you're higher risk if you don't have a vent hood. You're higher risk if you're higher risk for high indoor air pollution. Smoker if you use humidifiers, if you use scented products. Um, but I don't think that everywhere all at once should be trying to measure indoor air quality, but how could we find homes that have put, like you were saying too, Marilee, like put margin for improvement, where the improvements would probably make a real difference in health in that home. So thanks for letting me present today, Tammy. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for doing it. I mean, I've seen a little bit of this before, but it just seems to raise like, how should we be in the space of indoor air quality? Maybe you don't want to be there, but uh, I do think it's a little more complicated than everybody should think about air quality because you spend all your time there, which is how we sometimes lead off proposals, right? And so I wouldn't mind having that broader discussion now that we know this amount. What
Hmm.
should, how should we behave? How should we target? I also
Hmm.
am really grateful to you for bringing in the idea of doing a phase one so that we weren't chasing reductions in houses that don't need reducing. I think it's kind of along similar lines.
Hmm.
And I think I've been trying to get my head around, can we learn anything from that? I mean, they're not random. They're not, there's a whole bunch of not with regard to that
Yeah.
initiated phase one, but I do think it's informative and useful and something that was not there in the original proposal.
Thanks.
Thanks. It was really, really interesting. And I, like you, look at if in these places where we can make a difference, now you know how to message it. I mean, you've got a box, you could do it. It can, and just figuring out, where those groups are, um, to make a more targeted, approach next.
Hmm.
Because sometimes, it's not the group that's most vulnerable that we're able to get to immediately. And
Right.
in a way, it probably is good that we're not, from the standpoint of we can mess around with a bigger group of people who are people and have, houses or have whatever the thing is, but they're not in that, they help to kind of be the beta testers of stuff so that you use them up and you don't use up your small main population that you really want to see what matters for them and how you can make it better.
Hmm. Yeah.
Christian, you've
Thanks.
been pretty quiet, so I'm going to give you the last word.
And no, this is great. It was interesting to hear. I think it goes back to I like the bat on the ants analogy, but I guess the one I just keep coming back to is like I think those who need these interventions need them a lot. The people we
Yeah.
can most easily reach, not the people who need them, and how do we deal with that
Hmm.
um, discrepancy between those two pieces? Now I think we can reach those people. Sometimes they're raising awareness with the low-hanging fruit. So how do we philosophically manage that? But that's where I'm at on it.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks, Christian.
Okay, well, this was a great presentation because it raised more questions than it answered. Thank you so much, Ellison. And I want to circle back with you about the well-being thing because I I think we might have more or different ways of looking at it now, slightly different, that might be productive.
I would love that. Yeah, I think what I shared today is sort of not a block. I just I'm struggling with the attention piece.
I'm gonna work on it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I have lots of thoughts. They're probably poorly formed. Um, but and I don't have the correct words. And Marilee's been helping me acquire some of the correct words.
Great.
So
Well, I will follow up with you on that. So
yeah. Okay,
thanks,
thanks
everyone.
everyone. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, bye.